Hello and welcome to the Dead Air Dudes. I'm Izzy.
Chief Rocka.
What is up, everybody? Welcome, Dead Air Dudes Nation, to another episode of the Dead Air Dudes podcast, and in particular, the True Crime series. Today we have the dating game killer, Rodney Alcala.
One and only Rodney.
He's a
Okay.
American convicted rapist and serial killer who was sentenced to death in California for 5 murders committed in that state between 1977 and 1979. He also received an additional 25 years to life after pleading guilty to 2 more murders in New York in 1971 and 1977. His true, body count, victim count is really unknown, but there are rumors that it's much, much higher than that.
Oh, it has to be for many reasons. Many reasons. Let's start from the very beginning. Born in 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. He has multiple siblings. His father left the family. However, and then they moved to LA. However, he grew up in a apparently loving household, no issues, loving mother, was provided for. He apparently had a good childhood. He went to Catholic school. His brother attended West Point. And then in 1960, he himself enlisted into the U.S. Army.
So it seemed like an army brat.
Right, but as pointed out by our previous conversations and all, there's in our profile, our amateurish profile of serial killers, usually something stems from childhood. There's usually something rotten and the individual grows bent in one certain way. Nothing in childhood has suggested to that. But here's where it gets dicey in the Army. So multiple times he went AWOL. And in one particular occasion, he was evaluated by the military psychiatrist to have a mental breakdown and to display very disturbing signs. And they didn't go out to say psycho, psychopathic, or anything
seems like that he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and therefore that they discharged him.
But he was honorably discharged.
No, of course.
So there was nothing he did at that time that warranted something other than that. But that was probably the first sign that something was not right.
No, dude, he hitchhiked from Fort Bragg to his mom's house when he went AWOL.
Yeah, that's a long ass way.
Yeah, I mean,
across the damn country. So
whatever went, and I say this in the best possible way, I guess mentally, whatever went screwy in his head, and it's no defense because this has to be something deep rooted further, that brought him to do all this, sadistic crap. You know what I mean? But it kind of manifested itself, I guess, at that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, so 3 years removed from the Army, 1963 in New York, he was arrested for assaulting a girl. He attacked her with a Coke bottle.
Here we go.
And here we go, the long chain of revolving door. And so the girl fled, and it was a minor offense, but again, he was let go. And as we follow Mr. Alcala, he goes back and forth from coast. He goes New York, he goes California. He goes New York, he goes
California.
Bi-coastal serial killer. And he's shown in both coasts to have an affinity for photography. This is what does him in, and this is how he gets his victims mostly. By all accounts, he's charismatic. He's
Mhm.
good looking. He's a nice guy. He's a suave Ted Bundy like individual. And he lures the women by saying, "You're pretty. I have this huge, nice camera. I like to take pictures. Want to take pictures?" I know how many people out there has used that line, but now this is an individual from the 60s. Again, think about it. It's the hippies, free love. Everybody's more trusting.
Of course.
It's
I mean,
perfect
you,
for his.
someone tells you now to do that, you'd be like, what? Yeah. I mean,
I
it's a
mean, right
sign
now
of the time.
you can't go to a Comic Con and just take pictures of people. There's a proper way to do it. You got to approach somebody and
There's
ask them
etiquette. There's
your
you,
approval. Hey, may I take your photograph? And that's it. Period. Stop. You don't say, "Can I take your photograph in my hotel, in my backyard, in my car?" Again, different times, right? It's not a phone with a camera. It's, I have this nice fancy camera. I'm a good looking guy. You want to make it big as a model? I got a whole setup in my studio. Blah blah blah. So that was in 1963. And then one major account that happened, which ties in, was the abduction of a young 8-year-old,
yeah.
Tali Shapiro. Now, again, we usually, oh, we should have said from the get go, this gets extremely graphic, guys.
Yep. We're
If
going
you're
to
not in it to hear it,
details about about the crimes and everything, and we don't want to uh, make light of anything. We just we're just trying to just give you facts as we know them, and and so
we
warning. If,
we absolutely do not mean to glorify anybody,
no.
and we're not ranking anybody, but this individual and his practices ranks up there in the very graphic. So just be advised. Because now we're speaking about an 8-year-old. There's an 8-year-old who's the daughter of a wealthy socialite, but their house burned down, so they're living in the Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles. Marmont. And she's an 8-year-old girl in a white Sunday dress and white penny loafers and Mary Jane's, and she's just kicking around outside. And here drives up Rodney. Tells her, "I know your parents. I'll give you a ride. They want your dad. I know your dad. They wanna see you." First, she's hesitant, but somehow he convinces her. An 8-year-old kid. Now, the only saving grace is that a stranger across the street witnesses this whole thing. Yeah, something didn't settle right. So
Right.
sometimes irony in things, and sometimes there are some good citizens out there. This individual follows Rodney's car as he goes all the way back to his apartment. As Talia Shapiro, and I'm saying her name now because she has come on since she's not testified. She's recounted her story.
Yeah.
She's went public.
She's a survivor, and she's come on on multiple shows and
Now,
to tell her
yes,
story. So
he there are multiple victims here, but this is a pivotal case. So this individual who's following the stranger, leading this young girl into his apartment, calls the cops. And mind you, again, 1960s, early 1970s, goes to a payphone, calls it in. So I think there's an apparent abduction or some kind of kidnapping. Things don't look right. Could you just check it out?
yeah.
So they send this officer, who happens to be around, Officer Camacho, and he knocks on the door. He looks through. It looks like a regular apartment. He just doesn't knock. There's Rodney opening the blinds. He's naked. And he says, "Oh, I didn't know. I'm in the shower. I'll be there in a second." Officer notes he's not dripping wet once. Does not have a drop of water on him. He said, "I'm going to give you a count of 3 to open this door." He says He gives him the count of 5. Then he kicks down the door.
And then
And here we go, people.
he finds what he finds.
Full disclosure, he finds a bloody mess.
Yeah.
He finds a barbell on the young girl's neck, and more blood than there should be for an 8-year-old. And he did call for backup, and backup didn't come just yet. So he is caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I try to see if this young girl is still alive, or do I arrest this assailant? So unfortunately, in the way things work in the world sometimes, you can't judge the right or wrong thing, but if you're saving a life, you're saving a life. So he goes to save the life and administers CPR and tries to tend to the girl. So apparently, as I already exposed, she survives. As would you expect from any young individual who are suffering through this traumatic, almost near-death, torturous experience, she blacks out and doesn't remember what happened.
Of course.
Meanwhile, he escapes through the back door.
Yep.
But it's pivotal because this Officer Camacho saw his face, knows him. And from this encounter, they report him. He has a name registered. They find his apartment. They know who he is. He's a student in UCLA in the fine arts department studying photography.
And this is where it pisses me off, because what happens next is crazy, and I don't think you can blame California for this one. You could blame New York for this one. You know how he goes and he enrolls in NYU Film School.
Yes.
Using the name John.
Again, he goes to his other coast.
Berger. Okay.
John Berger.
He obtained a counseling job at a New Hampshire arts camp for children using this alias. And
yeah.
I mean, and
so apparently
you know what's funny? This is ironic and not funny, haha, but like, wow. Do you know who he studied film under in NYU?
No.
Roman Polanski.
Oh, get the hell out of here.
Yep.
Did he think he was a budding star? He had an eye for beauty. Oh my God.
Look, and I'm laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's like, oh, it's like, wow. It's like, it's.
Well, of course, right?
Yeah.
You want to go that genre? I mean, you intimately know it well. I said, oh, you have an eye for horror.
I mean, after having over 1,000 photographs, and you said it was, you mentioned before that he was an avid photographer. He was all about that. So who knows? And this is just he putting 1 and 1 together equaling 6. That they might have, you know what I mean?
Well, this is where things get so bad, because this is the early 70s in New York, and New York is not good.
Doesn't anyone check? I mean,
again, for most of the contemporary listeners out there who are
records or anything, Jesus Christ, man.
I know, but perspective for listeners out there, I'd say 20 and under. Or in the 20s. Try to imagine a world where there are not surveillance cameras everywhere.
Exactly. No social media, obviously.
There's a very cruddy database of fingerprints, which is the only thing really goes on.
Exactly. There's no DNA,
No, and hardly a unified nationwide database.
Right. They're all backed up. It's all freaking, it's all paper trail. It's all, folders, and nothing is digital, and it's
well, get this. While in New York and NYU, there was a strangulation of a budding young lady, Cornelia Crilly, in the Upper East Side. She was an aspiring TWA stewardess, and she was found strangled by nylon, raped and brutally murdered, and her breast bitten.
Yeah. Now,
when they're trying to track down Mr. Berger, they can't find him. But again, as you alluded to, he's a summertime camp art counselor for young kids in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, two camp attendees happen to be they duck into a post office because of heavy rain. In the post office, they're waiting for the rain to dissipate, they're drying off. They look on the wall and what's in the post office? FBI's top 10
FBI 10 most wanted
most
fugitives in
wanted.
1971. So they obviously recognize them. Now, if it's again, it's funny how things happen. If it wasn't raining and they didn't duck in to shelter themselves, they might have not have seen the
That's
post.
why sometimes
Who
there's
knows
a
how
hand
many
in the
more victims
universe.
or how much more crazy stuff happens. So so he's caught.
He's caught, he's extradited back to LA,
Yep.
charged with the murder of and the assault of the young girl I told you from before, 8-year-old, with everything:
Yeah.
rape, molestation, attempted murder, all you can think of. Unfortunately, and here again, as Izzy alluded to, this case, like many others,
And here we
is
go. Here we go with the justice system freaking
the
permanent
justice system.
fucking it up. Yes, once again.
It's a case of almost. It's almost got him. Almost got him. He was paroled already twice
Mm-hmm.
and let out on good behavior. Model citizen, did everything right. Therapy, rehabilitated.
So
I'm not gonna get into my feelings about that.
no, Shapiro's parents were relocated. They relocated to Mexico, and
Puerto
he
Vallarta.
would not let her testify at the
Yeah,
trial. Understandable. I
because
mean, they
yeah,
8
she
years
was
old.
8. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, but because of that,
Yeah, they could not convict him of rape and attempted murder because the primary witness is not there.
and here's the terminology of the law that I find sadly humorous. He was declared indeterminate. So, according to California state law, you can be sentenced to 1 year to life with this kind of ruling. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah. Allow parole boards to release the offender as soon as they demonstrated evidence of rehabilitation.
34 months later.
And
34 short months later.
so, and then less than 2 months after his release, I'm pulling out the little hairs I have left on my head. He was rearrested for assaulting a 13-year-old girl.
Smoking weed by the cliffs.
Identified as
13.
quote unquote Julie J. And oh boy.
Here we go again. 1977. He moves back to New York.
Wait. But there's more.
Oh, there's more.
Why was he paroled?
Model citizen, needs therapy.
After 2 years
Show that he can.
indeterminate sentence, he was paroled again. And there we go. Go ahead. 1977.
1977. And then again, a little historical reference. The summer of 1977 in New York City, where we hail from, was the summer of hell. It was record-setting hot. There was a blackout in July 13 and 14. There was the summer of Sam. As many people who study serial killers and this era have deemed the 70s to be serial killer heaven. More serial killers have popped up in the 70s, I think, than any other time.
Now,
and unfortunately in New York.
Do you think that was because it just kind of happened that way, or we were just more attuned to it because, it was just happening?
Well, you know what? I think everything kind of spills over from the free love hippie late 60s, where people are just happen to be more trusting. And then you have predators like, they can't be this easy. And it is this easy.
Yeah, no,
It's too easy.
Oh.
People hitchhike, people sleep on the streets, people trust everybody. Free love, man. Yeah, you're not gonna do me no wrong. Yeah, flower power. Yeah, you know what? Let's hug it out.
Dude,
I don't think so.
It gets worse and worse. It gets the legal system once again in 77, like you were saying, he's allowed to come back to New York. His parole officer, he permitted the repeat offender, known as a flight risk, to travel back to New York City. Okay. Then, of course, at that point, the NYPD, the cold case investigators, that they think that he killed
Ellen Hoover.
Ellen Hoover,
Ellen Hoover is the daughter of a famous Hollywood socialite.
and the goddaughter of Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. So here you go.
Yeah.
Let it go. All
So
right.
he picked on the wrong victim, if not, I mean, they're all wrong, but he picked on a victim who's well known.
Yes.
So her death during the summer of Sam, during the end of the blackout, during Hell Week, Hell Day in New York City, it's a predator's wet dream. The cops are going crazy. They're looking out for Summer Sam and other killers. Meanwhile, she goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
The boyfriend or somebody calls in and they get into her apartment. They knock down the door. She's not there. But on her refrigerator is a calendar. And on the calendar, it says July 15th, meet John Berger.
Wow.
So they get to New York. I mean, they get to LA because he's in LA. He was picked up again in LA. So he goes back and forth, back and forth. He goes back to LA. They pick him up. They question him. And he says, yeah, I met her. Again, he's a sly, smart mother. Yeah, I met up with her. We met up. We hung out. We did this. But then I dropped her off. So unfortunately, a year later, there's nothing to tie him.
No.
A year later, they find her remains in Westchester, New York. And again, no DNA or anything in that sense to tie him to that murder, although he was the last person that saw her.
So when he was back in LA in '78, he worked at the LA Times, had a typesetter
Under his real name.
Oh, it boggles the mind, man.
So he's getting more and more brazen.
He interviewed, and they thought that he could have been the Hillside Strangler.
Yes, because again, it's serial killer heaven in the 70s.
You got a guy who was arrested multiple times already and paroled. He almost killed one person, and he killed another. I'm at a loss. And so then he was arrested and served a brief sentence for, of all things, marijuana possession. Okay? And of course, he got out after that.
Release. Catch and release. This is a sad, sad testimonial to catch and release that does not work. And this predator constantly gets re-released into society and has killed positively more than he's been convicted of.
Of course, when they say
it's in the dozens.
No, when they say it's possibly over 100, I believe that.
It's possible.
I mean, 8 to 130. That's crazy. And at this point, they found that he had 1,000 photographs
plus of boys,
teenage girls and boys,
teenage girls, and of all ages,
in explicit sexual poses. So around this time, he was acting like he's a photographer for modeling.
His entire MO is that
he convinced hundreds of young men and women, and he put them in his portfolio, quote unquote. And he's even sharing these pictures with his coworkers at the New York Times, at the LA Times.
He's brazen beyond belief, and now we're gonna get to why he's called a dating game.
This, quote unquote. This is what one of his coworkers said. I thought it was weird, but I was young. I didn't know anything. When I asked why he took the photos, he said their moms asked him to. I remember the girls were naked. So already this dude is out of his gourd.
So much so, and his brazen, arrogant ways
here we go.
gets so much so that he applies for the dating game as a contestant. And using his charm, wit, savvy, and whatever predatorial prowess, he gets on.
Yeah.
Not only does he get on,
He wins.
he wins. He wins a date. Now,
I think actually we could see this episode, if I'm not mistaken, right?
it might be possible for you to. It might be the number one downloaded episode of the dating game, and which was by all accounts not. I mean, I watched it when I was younger too. It wasn't so bad. It was interesting. It wasn't the greatest game of all, but what there have been accounts from the co-contestants, staff, producers, whatnot, and especially the winner, female contestant who wins the date with, that he was weird. He had weird opinions. He was a weird guy off camera. He was odd. Something was off about him. So all these people had their radar on.
Of course, even a fellow contestant described him as a very strange guy with bizarre opinions. All right. He was called a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in a dark room at age 13.
Fully developed.
Fully developed.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, you know how they were back in those days. They try to freaking, play with words and kind of throw it over the window here. But I
would say, Izzy, hey, you're a young lad over there. He's turning into quite a man.
Yeah, Cheryl Bradshaw, who won the infamous date, she refused to go out with him.
She told the producers, I don't care what you do to me, legal action, or whatever. I'm not going to date with that psycho.
And that probably saved her life.
It probably did save her life. And apparently he's, the timeline goes, he probably committed 3 more murders after the airing of the dating game episode. Why we call him the dating game murderer, and how that murder of the attempted murder of the 8-year-old I mentioned prior ties in, is that the same arresting officer was watching TV one night, and here comes the dating game show, and in total stunned, shock, disbelief, he goes, "That's fucking him. That's him." So they round up, I think, a witness from a prior murder suspect that who also saw the individual who roped in the victim, and they brought her into, the interrogation room, what have you, and she's sitting there, and the officer turns on the TV, and the TV is a recording of the dating game episode. And there he is with the 3 contestants. And right like that, she says, "Oh my God, that's him. There's your positive ID." And she was like, "No, without a shadow of a doubt." They didn't even ask her nothing. They just turned on the TV. She's like, "That's him.
Yep.
That is him." So if anything the dating game ever did for entertainment-wise, it helped catch a freaking serial killer.
Who should have been locked up.
Who should have been locked up decades ago.
Thrown away the key probably 4 years prior to that.
And again,
7 years prior to that.
Not to glaze over the graphic, I hold this to the end because of the delicate nature in our audience, and I do give respect to the victims. Not here to glorify anything, but his MO, he made it a point, especially in the later murders, to pose his victims. And pose them in such a way to almost be like, "I'm here, nothing you can do about it. I'm a badass, and I'm going to show you they suffered." It's been suspected by the coroner examiner and everybody else that he possibly had his victims suffocate to near blacking out, does his thing, torture, mutilation, rape, and everything, gets them to revive, and then suffocates them again in a cycle until he finally does the deed and kills them.
Yeah.
So this is not just a killer. He is a sick Sadistic.
Sick son of a bitch. You know what I mean? They were they were posed in carefully chosen positions. Everything. It's just you can't freaking make this shit up. It's
This is evil personified. And if we just piling on the justice system, he has found loopholes in countless appeals, picking on minutia, sticking to his innocence. He's blaming the Hillside Strangler, it's somebody else, misidentification. I mean, to the very end, on a lot of technicalities, which, oh my goodness, if there ever is a scale of technicalities, I can understand gross negligence, but I mean, a few little things that he's been basically extending his life. No one like this deserves an extended life sentence.
yeah. I mean,
It's nonsense.
I mean, and he was actually they finally caught him after he after the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl in Huntington Beach, and
Yes.
that was June 20th, 1979. Right. Then her friend had mentioned to the police that a stranger had approached them from on the beach, asking to take their pictures.
His MO.
And they showed everyone his photo, and obviously, people recognized him, and they finally freaking caught him. And when they searched his mother's house in Monterey Park, they found a rental receipt for a storage locker in Seattle. So this dude had been all over the place, right? In said locker, they found the girl's earrings. So either the guy is so cocky,
he didn't take her for a joyride, brazen.
He didn't give a fuck, or he thought that he would never get caught because he beat the system so many times.
It's almost as though
caught.
It's almost as though he's gloating and taunting to pose the bodies to be found in the manner which they're found. So, who knows? I'm going to leave this for the psychiatrists and all experts to figure out. Who knows what makes an individual such as this tick when apparently there was nothing revealed from his childhood or past.
Yeah, something happened that must have missed. Or something happened within him and the army, and they almost fucked up the trial. They fucked the trial actually.
Yes, they screwed up the trial, and they keep screwing up the trial. That he has the wherewithal to keep filing appeals to the point that only now, I think 2010, only in recent memory has the California system been able to give him the death sentence.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
2010.
He was
caught in 78
to death, but the verdict was overturned because jurors have been properly informed of his prior sex crimes.
Again.
In 86, a second trial, virtually identical for the first, for omission to the prior criminal record testimony. He was again convicted and sentenced to death. He appealed. He said that the park ranger who found the body was hypnotized by police investigators while preparing the third prosecution in 2003. So already, this is going on. Like you said, all the way to leads to freaking 2010. Crazy.
30 years.
Crazy stuff. And at this time, this motherfucker is still alive.
Well, I don't know about California. I have to read up about California. I'm not sure if they even have the death penalty. But rest assured, behind bars for the last 40 years, your tax dollars are keeping him up.
Yeah.
And he's filed against the system that they refuse to give him a low-fat diet. Dude, I'd put some cyanide pills in that low-fat last meal if you want. A low-fat diet.
And he wrote a book.
He wrote a book.
He wrote a book. You, the jury, in which you claim innocence in the case for the girl from Huntington,
where he blames it on the Hillside Strangler. Well, friends, As this draws to a close of our latest episode on the true crime saga, um, quite interesting. A rocky road that has taken for the dating game killer to finally be caught. Unfortunately, the road still continues as he still
And he's
lives.
still alive. He's what, 70? He should be 70, what, 78, I think?
78, 77.
77. Yeah,
He's
77.
a true psychopath
True piece of shit.
with. So, if there's anything to take out there, if somebody offers to take your photograph, if somebody offers you to go further than that, polite pass. And I don't know, everybody who engages in Tumblr, this, that, matching all these other stuff, think twice before you go on a date. Have a safety valve, go with a friend, go in a group.
Yeah, look, I mean, and like we mentioned before, this is a case that is not the normal cases in the sense that you can see his upbringing brought something to the table and essentially, you know, made him this way. This is something completely different. This guy's a sociopath, psychopath who, you know,
And unlike some of the other ones we've previously reviewed,
around,
no confession,
which is insane to me. But
no confession, no remorse.
oh, to this day, he's still freaking, you know, he still thinks that.
Oh, one tidbit. The FBI had released as proper photos as they can, because some were very improper, photos that they released from his discovery in his apartment in New York to see if they can solve some crimes of missing persons. I'm not sure. We have to follow up to see if anything has come of that. But unfortunately, there were more than half, I think, number of photographs that were not appropriate to display, but understandably so for unsolved crimes from this heinous predator. Some resolution can be found maybe in some of those photographs.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Dating Game Serial Killer. Thank you all for joining for this session and for our past sessions. And again, we've celebrated some milestones with our podcast, for minutes logged in, for downloads. And again, we'd like to thank all of you who subscribe, like, and keep on listening, keep on trucking, and keeping this train going. You are Deader Dudes Nation.
Deader Dudes Nation for following us, for, you know, keeping us company during these episodes and enjoying our content. As 2021, we're going to continue to give you, you know, good stuff. And if you guys love this true crime stuff, we'll just keep on putting them out, you know, and continue to bash the justice system as far as how they mess all this shit up. And yeah, so thank you all, and thanks to everybody all around the world who follow us and listen to us, and that's pretty much it. I'm Izzy.
I'm Raka. Be vigilant, and remember to always save the whales.
Save the world. Take care, guys.